Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Quick Gains, where we are joined by our very own Brie Anderson, my favourite ginger, second only to Jason, obviously, clearly. So Brie is a bit of an analytics geek or nerd, depending how she feels in the morning. She goes through lots of analytics. She does copywriting. She does SEO. She works for a number of clients, Quicc being one of them. So we get to work together quite regularly, which is awesome. She contributes to Moz Search Engine Journal. She's the builder of the odd kayak rack, apparently, and also the odd piece of patio furniture. So she just told me.
Yes.
So, Brie, welcome. How are you doing? How's your day?
Doing all right. I got my coffee over here. And so I'm just getting the day started before running around like crazy for the rest of the day.
Lovely. I should have said also, Beast Analytics is Brie's business brand. So it's all about analytics, data, and she has a cap. Tip your head slightly. Just down. Right down. There she is. Beast Analytics. Tell me, where did Beast Analytics come from? Why Beast?
So originally it was Beam. I did Beam for a little bit, tried that out, and that was Brie Anderson marketing. But then when I really kind of got specific about what I wanted to do, I wanted strategy and or analytics to be in the name. And so my brother said, well, what about Beast? Because you could have ST for strategy, and then you could just say Beast Analytics, and then you would have analytics and marketing. Whoa. Sorry, my phone just went off. Yeah, so it's Brie Anderson strategy and analytics. So yeah, Beast Analytics. And I kind of like we have this little fox here too. He's cute.
I have a t-shirt that I'm actually possibly maybe a little bit too big for now, because apparently lockdown does that to a guy. That actually says, if you can be anyone, be a fox, but if you can be a fox, just be a fox.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
That's what I thought.
They're very, they're good animals. Exactly. My dog kind of looks like a snow fox. That's what I say. She looks like a snow fox. She's white and so cute.
I have seen your dog before. She is very cute. This is true. So today we are going to jump into all sorts of interesting, geeky topics. We are going to get our nerd hats on ever so slightly.
All right, let's do it.
Where do you think we should start? Should we start with the strategy, or should we start with the SEO and the analytics? Where do you normally start with clients?
Well, usually with a client, I would ask kind of like what they're already doing. So let's start with strategy. Let's start with strategy. A lot of people talk, and I think this is kind of, where a lot of people that we're working with start is with social media, because they think, well, it's free. And, it's social media. Everybody's there. Mm-hmm. We can tackle, let's do this, Dan. I'm just going to kind of hijack this show here. Let's do this. How would you answer somebody that says, which social media platform should I be on? This is one of my favorite questions that people ask me.
If people ask me that.
Yeah.
So I would normally say, pick the blend of the one that you are most comfortable with and can be most consistent on, but also where your audience is most likely to be. Because there's no point targeting, say, a mid-30s mother of two on Twitch, for example.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's what that's what most clients will come to me and ask is like, okay, so where should I get started? And that's usually, a lot of people were saying, well, you have to be everywhere. That was kind of at the beginning. That's kind of what people were saying, but that's not necessarily introducing smart. Crazy SEO guru Brie.
I don't know who that is. I should say to those watching within our Facebook group community, there is a link at the bottom of the post in one of the first comments to click on, so we can actually see your name. Is an API thing within Facebook. We can't actually see who you are unless you click on that. So Facebook user, thank you, but we don't know who you are.
Facebook user.
Continue.
Yeah. So usually I would say kind of the same thing. And this is actually something that Brian Fanzo, who I also work with, kind of really got me thinking about was if you can't be consistent somewhere, like you're saying, if you can't be consistent or you're going to be too afraid to get started or too afraid to press the damn button, as he says, then you're not going to be successful on that social media platform. So if you hate taking pictures and you hate taking videos, then Instagram probably isn't going to work for you. Even if you could say 90% of my audience is there, well, that's great. But if you're only going to post once a month, you're not going to do anything, right? So that's kind of the conversation that I have too. I do this activity sometimes when I do presentations or workshops, what have you, where I have people go through an exercise where they have a partner and they get all of these slips. So it's kind of like charades. And for one of the slips, like they can only talk to the person. For one of the slips, they have to act it out. For one of the slips, they have to draw pictures, so on and so forth. And at the end of it, I go, okay, raise your hand if this was the most comfortable for you, this one, this one, this one. And then I say, okay, so now we're going to go over all the tools that will make you successful if you're comfortable with each of these. And you have no excuse to not do social media anymore because I'm going to give you all the tools. And that's, I think that's a good exercise because it gets people away from thinking like, okay, am I going to be able to find the right hashtags? Am I going to be able to do whatever? It's like, no, just find what you're comfortable with and what fits into your flow. Like if you're always, for instance, if you bake cakes and you're constantly baking cakes or decorating cakes, how hard is it just to put up a camera for a couple minutes while you're baking a cake? Like it's not that hard. You just press record, right?
Behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
Old school.
Yeah. So that's kind of like with strategy. That's how I like to think about it. That consistency is so key.
How would you suggest to people that you work with to get over the hump of, procrastination, hesitation, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I just kind of encourage people to get it to be a part of their everyday routine, like to get used to just as they're writing an email to answer a question, write a separate or like copy and paste it into a document, because then you automatically have like the answers, right? And how hard is that to turn that into a blog post? And finding the tools that are right for them. So I like to supply a myriad of different, like, there's so many things that you can use to edit a video, right? So here are some options for you to do it on your phone. Here are some options to do it online. Hey, that's my girl.
She's talking about Marissa for those people who are listening and not watching.
Marissa Callie.
We like Marissa.
We do. And then to make it like, so obviously you want it to be second nature, but at the beginning, it's just about doing it and being willing to not be good at it. I listen to a lot of like content creation podcasts and business podcasts and things like that. And a quote that gets referred to a lot is Seth Godin said, 50% of your content is going to be less than average. And that's because average is 50%. And so you just have to be willing to accept that. You just have to be willing to put out crappy stuff and find what works. And once you find what works, you'll be able to kind of like get into that flow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the last person who asked me that question, they had an issue, not so much with showing up, but it was more what was holding them back was the issue with perfectionism. And I actually got them to open up an account on TikTok and just post a couple of just random funny videos on TikTok. And they were like, isn't that for kids? I was like, yes, but no one's going to see it and no one really cares. So rock on. And you know what? It helped. They did some dancing videos with their teenage girl, I think. They did some random funny duet thing. And they kind of got over the hump. But apparently going on LinkedIn, which is their platform of choice, doing videos on LinkedIn after doing some TikToks was a lot easier.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer that every marketer should be on TikTok, not necessarily to try and market something, right? Like there's not that's a whole different conversation. I was about to say there's
We
not
can
an
go into that
audience.
later.
Yeah, I was about to say there's not an audience there for everyone, but I don't necessarily believe that. I think there is, but alas. But it might not be like your focus or something that you go to use actually for work, right? Like do it for fun, and you will realize that TikTok forces you to be creative in a lot of different ways. The way that they have, like, if you ever take a video on TikTok, it splices just the same way that Snapchat does. So, you record for a second, record for another couple seconds, and just like the things that people create on TikTok, I've tried some of these things and they are hard. Like some of the transitions and all that stuff, it's hard. It is not easy. Even the song where they're pointing, that takes a lot of time. But seeing all these different trends and seeing what people are doing, it is really like it does get your creative juices flowing. And like you're saying, like it is a place to be fun and kind of have just be silly. And I think that especially right now we need that. But I think as marketers, we get really used to like looking at, look at the Nikes and how can you copy what Nike is doing and make it work for your brand, or find someone that you really enjoy their content and do that, when really like you should be trying to do something different sometimes
And be yourself.
and be yourself. Yes, be yourself.
It sounds really,
How
really
hard
bizarre
is
for some
that?
people. It's like, I need to be like Mike, but I don't want to be me, because that's just so scary.
Yeah.
I've got to admit, I did a TikTok a while ago. It's probably back in the summer now, actually. And hello, webcam utility.
Sorry.
That's all right.
You got it, love.
Brie is still here. It's just the webcam utility is still in beta.
Yeah, it is.
In UK. So it's a bit picky. But yeah, so just while Bree's fixing that, I did a video of my children, but it was, well, you can go to my TikTok if you want to and you can see it, but it was, I went into the kitchen to get a bottle of water, went back out into the living room, and the living room had been turned upside down, but I kind of got the transition so tightly woven as I was going back into the living room. I cut it, did all the rearranged the living room, cut it back in, spliced it, kind of like blurred the transition a little bit. That whole thing took me about an hour and a half to do.
Yeah.
But it taught me so much about actually doing and staging and framing and light and all sorts of stuff. And I did one of them. Kids loved it because they got to sit on top of a stack of cushions, so they were fine.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it really does help. For sure.
Yeah, it really encourages that creativity, and it's so fun. And it's like I said, though, it is crazy to see what other people can do. And all of the videos are less than 60 seconds, and you would think that it should only take a few minutes to edit those, but they take a long time. They take a long time. Even if you're just adding in like the words or doing something like that, like they still take a long time to edit. But yeah, it definitely teaches you a lot. That's for sure.
So let's dig into analytics a little bit, because
Let's do that.
Strategy, content, obviously very intrinsically linked. And we're talking obviously about creating content, spending the time to create content. But obviously we need to know where our time is best spent with the creation of said content and where it's not being best spent at all and basically wasting time is money, blah, blah, blah. So where would you start, and where would you suggest people start with looking at their data, and what kind of things should they look out for?
Well, so I always suggest people create a Google Analytics account and get that all set up. Make sure you have all of your tags working properly. And that's because it's free. I know that, so Google Analytics actually only works off of estimates. So it's not like hard, they're not hard numbers, right? But it is free. Like the barrier to entry is very low. You just have to put a piece of code on your website and it starts collecting data, and you're starting to get data. So I highly suggest people do that. And then obviously, if you have Facebook, getting the Facebook pixel on your website, things of that nature. Why do people keep calling me? Okay, sorry.
Because you're so popular. Obviously.
I don't know. Obviously. But my favorite view is acquisition, all traffic, source medium. It sounds complicated, but if you were ever in Google Analytics, it's literally 3 clicks. And the reason I like that is because you can see where people are coming from and how they act differently on your website, right? So maybe you're seeing a ton of likes and reactions and comments on your Facebook posts, right? But you notice that only 5 or 6 people are actually coming to your website. And even more so, those people that are coming to your website aren't actually spending time on your website. Where you could have a LinkedIn post that gets a couple comments and all of a sudden you're getting 15 people to your website and they're actually spending time on the website and filling out a form fill, right? So, I mean, it makes you look past some of those vanity metrics, which was a conversation like a couple of years ago where everybody was talking about vanity metrics. But really, truly, with digital marketing now and all the things that we can track now, there's no reason to rely on those metrics alone, because you can see the exact flow of how people are going through your website, where they're coming from, and how they're interacting. And I use that. There's Brian. There he is. And you can use that to kind of shape your strategy, right? And we did some of this with Quicc, right? Realizing that maybe social media was great for our brand awareness, but it's not great for our conversions. We're not necessarily getting new people to sign up. And so then you have to make that decision. Like, at what points are we going to be focusing on brand awareness? What points are we going to be focusing on conversion, and really knowing which strategies drive which results, if that makes total sense. Clear as mud.
Total sense to me. I'm hoping it makes sense to everyone else. If not, let us know. If it does, let us know in the comments as well that it does.
Yeah.
Either way, tell us.
Yeah, let us know.
I mean, one thing we did with Quicc, and I've not been shy of talking about this, especially during, I'm going to avoid cliches like unprecedented times, because those terms just
Lord,
annoy me.
yeah, that's my favorite.
Maybe we should have like lockdown, lingo bingo. Maybe that would be a funny one to do one day. But
that's a good one.
One
Lingo
of the things that
bingo?
lockdown lingo bingo.
Love that.
It's like LLB.
Yeah.
Done. So we had like a big shift in buying behavior, didn't we? Like massively.
Yeah.
Pretty much a few weeks after lockdown was even on horizon, buying behavior just hugely shifted. And talk us through some of the things that we actually went through with the analytics to start trying to pick apart how that was changing. What kind of views, what kind of metrics, what kind of data would you have looked at, and did you look at to try and figure that out?
Well,
when buying behavior changes.
Yeah, shameless plug here. I do I do a live show every Friday where I go through analytics live. So whether we've done Google Analytics, Search Console, Twitter Analytics, and UTMs so far. And if you've watched any of those, I really like to look at the peaks, because a peak indicates that something changed. And with Quicc, we saw, an initial peak. And if you look over time, you see a peak and a little bit of a plateau and then a dip. And honestly, a lot of people that are selling online saw this same behavior. But to really understand, right, because we knew people were buying more online, especially our product makes things more accessible. More people were doing video, things of that nature. I isolated that peak and plateau, and I started with the medium source or source medium. So you can see that just gives you information like it was organic from Google or organic from Yahoo, or it was Facebook, referral from Facebook, those kinds of things. But to really, really dig deeper, I segment the data by adding another layer, right? So sometimes I add in the layer of like a landing page. So, okay, so they're coming from Google, but are they going straight to our sign up page, or are they going to one of the blog posts that we have because they were looking something specific up. And so getting really granular with the data, but also at the same time, not using it as the be all end all, because like I said, it is based off of like patterns and estimates and things of that nature. It only captures about 70 to 80% of your real traffic. But yeah, so we looked at that. We were looking at where is traffic coming from? How are people finding us? That was a big one. So making sure that we had Search Console up and working correctly, because that would tell us what people were typing into Google to get to our website. Were they typing in put captions on my video, or were they typing in do I need captions, or were they typing in putting text on top of my video for school? You know what I mean? Like there are lots of different instances, or a lot of different ways that people could have gotten to our website. So we like to really dig into that so we can understand the customer. At the end of the day, when it comes to, and SEO is kind of like my background, right? So when it comes to SEO, we're looking specifically at how do we answer people's questions? Like what are they looking up and how can we answer those? And then how can we do it in a way that Google is going to understand it and see that we're adding that value? And really that's all SEO comes down to, not to oversimplify it, but really that's what it is.
So really it's the creation and distribution of content that solves a problem, but putting the viewer or the audience first.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Easier said than done, though, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely it is. Especially because, like I said, you're getting data, but then you have to make sense of the data and see like what opportunities are really worth having or really worth trying to take. So for instance, if we're an online shop, let's say, and we sell sporting equipment, the majority of our traffic probably won't come from Google necessarily unless we get really specific. Like we're not going to rank for baseball bats more than likely because you're competing with major retailers online like Amazon and Dick's Sporting Goods and all of those big chains, right? So maybe as a sports retailer, you're having to look to more specific, like answering the question. So how do I pick a baseball bat? How do I, like, what bat should I get my son for T-ball? What, looking at those questions or looking at the longer tail, like people looking up specific bats. And all of that just comes down to crunching a lot of numbers, looking at the results, and kind of spotting the patterns and spotting the opportunities, which is why I really, really like analytics, because with the numbers, I can see it all right in front of me of like, okay, this search trend, for instance, maybe it's peaking and it's about to go down and there's going to be a little less competition. I don't know. I just like the numbers, man. I just like the numbers.
So for you, is it all about the data, obviously, following, data doesn't lie, of course. At what point does the data need to have an injection of intuition and guesswork? When does that happen in your world?
Right. So, well, I guess I've kind of left out a whole piece of the puzzle, especially when we talk about Quicc, is that we use a tool called Lucky Orange, and that allows us to see exactly how people are interacting with the website. So everything I do, yes, it is data driven, but it's also, I'm also thinking of the customer journey, right? Because that's, at the end of the day, like I said, that's who we're serving. And so, if you see something weird, I go into Lucky Orange and I say, okay, so how are they interacting with the website? And this is something that we used and saw that people were getting frustrated with a specific component of our website. And a lot of times that gets, that goes over people's head because they never really actually look at how people are interacting with their website. So I like to avoid guesswork if I can. But I think at some point, like you're saying, like there is, some of it is guesswork, but it's just like creating content, right? Like you have to be willing to test and you have to be willing to be able to say like, all right, well, that didn't work, or that wasn't the right answer, or maybe it was fine the way it wasn't, and we'll just take it back. And I think testing is critical, and you have to be willing to test. And that's what paid or organic or A/B testing, titles of your blog posts, what have you. I think a lot of that just comes down to trusting your gut and then being willing to say, nope, that didn't work.
I mean, that's an interesting segue, Laura, because I know this is something we've spoken about before, but a lot of people have a bit of a divided opinions, let's say, on whether you should test content organically and then boost with paid, or whether you should test content with paid and then go to town with that content once tested organically. Where would you sit on that as a
marketer? I'm going to say it depends.
diplomatic.
Yeah. So, and this is why I say it depends. It depends on what your goal is. So if you are trying to reach a cold audience, somebody that doesn't know about your product, somebody that's not very far along in the buying cycle, for instance, it doesn't necessarily make sense to test organic content, because that's going to be served to people that already follow you. More than likely, they already have some sort of relationship with you, or they're only once removed, right? So it doesn't, in my mind, like, it would be nice to test it organically. It's not really a must. Like, you could definitely do it the other way, where you're testing it with a cold audience as an ad and then using it organically. That's fine. But if you are looking to get more, like if you're using lookalike audiences, right? Like if we're going to run a Facebook ad to a 1% lookalike audience, then yeah, you would test something organically, because those people are only going to be once removed from the people you're already reaching with your organic media, or that may have seen it from organic. So I think it kind of depends on what exactly your goal is, but that's any strategy. It's always going to depend on what your goal is. Where do you lie on that? Do you have any opinions?
Well, the reason I asked that was that I just yesterday watched a rather long pair of videos. I spent about a good hour and a half watching two replays of live streams that Daryl Eves gave on YouTube growth. And he was, I mean, if you don't know who he is, for those watching, whether live or on the replay, he's pretty much one of the most well-known YouTube strategists and educators, I guess you could call him, on the YouTube platform. He has very much an SEO background similar to Brie's, and he shifted from website-based SEO to purely YouTube SEO. And he was saying, and he was being rather vocal, not colourful in his language though, so good on him for that one. But I think he would do like off camera, because he seemed quite passionate about it. It really annoys him when he sees people promoting their content to people who already know them, you know, friends, family, that kind of stuff, because he feels that, and he's tested this, when you put content on platforms like YouTube, i.e. a search engine, and then you get people who are looking at it doing you a favor almost, and then not people who are actually finding the content through the search algorithm itself, you're essentially confusing the algorithm by erroneous data, and you're making the algorithm's job harder to find you an audience that you don't already know. And it was a really interesting video on that basis. It completely shifts away a lot of YouTube creators and content creators teach how to create and disseminate content.
Right.
And I thought it was a very interesting couple of
lives. I think the reason he was probably saying that was because, you know, we blanket a lot of strategies. Everyone should be doing it this way, right? But that's not necessarily the case, because everybody is marketing something different. So in the case that I'm selling baseball bats, yeah, I really shouldn't be reaching out to everyone on my YouTube or on my Facebook page that are friends, families, whatever, and saying, hey, go watch this for me and get me a view, because not all of them are going to be in the market of baseball bats or sporting equipment for that matter. However, if we are Quicc in our community is content creators, and we can help content creators. And we know that that's who is going to benefit from the video we just created. I think there's absolutely a reason and a way to reach out to those people and have them go ahead and watch that video. So I think it just depends on the content you're creating and the audience that he's speaking about. Because yeah, what it does is it confuses the search engine. They have no way to say, these are the kind of people that are going to be looking for this content or going to benefit from this content. Because at the end of the day, I mean, that's Google's goal. And Google owns YouTube, so therefore YouTube's goal is to get people the best answers as quickly as possible. So,
yeah. And Claire says hi, by the way.
Hey, Claire.
So Claire's just joined the team. When she has slightly more stable Wi-Fi, she will be appearing on this show as well. So I'm going to try not to scare her with that one. I'll be gentle. It's fine. So we talked a little about strategy, talked a little about content, talked a little bit about analytics and data. Now, a lot of people, and we've asked this question to most of the guests that we've had on this show thus far, and I'm going to ask you as well. Right now, things are changing. Things are difficult. Things are a bit tough. Things are a bit weird. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on in the news even now. We're not going to drop names or go into certain topics that we don't necessarily want to dive into. But it is a weird time, right? Now, a lot of people, they struggle with who to listen to, what to do, what not to do. You know, lots of opinions, whether it's founded in experience or not. Given that you are on this show, you work with us because you genuinely do know your stuff and you haven't just read it in a blog post, 2 hours prior, and then you're commenting and giving your opinion based upon that alone. You know what you're talking about.
You don't know that. You don't know that.
I do know that because I work with you and you're a genius. So yes, I do. No. So you genuinely know what you're talking about. So what kind of content or what kind of suggestions and almost strategies or tactics do you see on a regular basis that would confuse most people who aren't people like you and I? And what would you suggest they do differently? Bit of a loaded question there.
Yeah. What strategies do I see work consistently?
Yeah. And what should you ignore?
What should you ignore? Well, I played competitive sports for a long time. 14 years I played soccer, played in college, then switched and played rugby in college.
And can I just say, by the way, by that she means football. Because
my bad. Yeah. Yes. And my dad was my coach for a long time, which was, as anybody who's been coached by a parent knows, sometimes fun, sometimes not. But when my dad was the coach, we would start every practice by doing 100 touches. And didn't matter how old we were. So 100 touches of just like somebody throws you a ball and you have to settle it. Somebody throws you a ball, you have to settle it over and over again, 100 times. And I mean, this started at the age of 7 and it went to the age of 20, right? And at some point you just go, I've done this literally millions of times now. Why do I need to keep doing this? And my dad always said, if you can do the fundamentals better than anyone else, you're going to outplay 80% of the people you come across. And while it was truly annoying at every age to be doing those kinds of drills, I think there is a truth in the fact that if you can get the fundamentals right, you are ahead of 80% of people, because a lot of people are looking for the quick wins. A lot of people are looking for, just following everything that one specific person puts out. And maybe they've skipped the fundamentals completely. You could have the most amazing website that answers every single question. It answers it in text and it answers it in videos and it answers it with graphics. And it would never rank because what you forgot was to check the robots.txt file and your entire site was no indexed. Then Google can't get to it, period. Right? So I think what I try and educate people with is like, just focus on the basics. Like, do the basics to the absolute best of your ability. And then we can talk about, you know, the more crazy, like, how do we create a viral infographic, or how do we get, you know, publicists to come to us and use our, you know, whatever. Like, that stuff is great. But if you don't have a site that's easy to use, or, you know, a social media profile that's easy to find or easy to navigate, then none of that crazy stuff matters.
Yeah, I mean, when I talk about this, it's I always say you're trying to build a rocket ship before you figured out how to put one step in front of the other. It's, it makes no sense to me. But a lot of people, they look for the quick wins.
Yeah.
You know, it's a weird time. People are panicking. People are under pressure. You know, they've lost revenue. They've lost income.
Yeah.
And I think one of the last time someone asked me, it reminded me. Last time someone asked me this was probably about a couple of weeks back. Actually, my brother, and he's seen something. Because my dad and my brother, they work together. My dad's semi-retired now, but they do kitchen and bathroom fitting and kind of like home renovations in the local area where I used to grow up. And he said, well, there's someone that he sees locally who's basically offering courses around Facebook ads and that typical kind of Facebook ads agency, kind of phoning all the local tradespeople. And he had one of those getting in touch with him. And he was like, do you think I should do it? I was like, when was the last time you put something out on Instagram? And he goes, I had to find a login for it first. I was like, okay, let's start there, shall we? And one of the things that made me giggle about it was he was trying to figure out how to learn quickly the creation of a paid social media funnel before he even figured out what his audience consumes. And obviously you can imagine where that conversation went.
Yeah, it was for that instance.
Yeah. I mean, he sits on Facebook and he puts pictures on, there's more pictures on their building, on their Facebook page. There's more pictures of their van and the alloy wheels that he put on it because he liked them than there is about the actual examples of work. Yeah. And he's my brother. I love him. But I'm like, dude, seriously, like, no.
It happens. And that's why I say, like, focus on the basics. Like, for tradespeople, make sure you have your Google My Business set up. Make sure all of your information's on there. Make sure all that information is correct. Make sure you've claimed it and nobody can come change the information. Make sure you have all of your pictures on there and they're cropped correctly and they look halfway decent, right? Like, there are so many basic things that you could focus on first before you're like, oh, let's create a paid funnel. Like, your Google My Business could bring you tons of leads. And there's a good chance that you don't even know what Google My Business is, but it's one of the most foundational pieces of SEO for tradespeople in any business, really.
And to be fair, that's where they as a business is going, because like I said, my dad's semi-retired now, so he doesn't really do a huge amount of work. He just picks the jobs that he wants to do, and then the rest of the time he chills out in the garden with a sherry or a cup of tea, depending on what mood he's in.
There you go.
But my brother, he's older than me, 3 years older than I am, and it's a going business for him. And they, up until now, they've had word of mouth for years. But times as they are, that right now, at least, when or whether it's going to start up again, who knows? That word of mouth business has dried up. So he's a little bit like, how are we going to do this again? Yeah. So yeah, like you said, Google My Business, Facebook page, Instagram kind of stuff, whatever, getting the images, like updating basic things like a logo. I think the logo they had.
Do you have a website? Is your website easy to get to? Does your website talk about all the services that you have? Does it talk about all of the areas that you serve? Right? Like, those are things that are so basic that people will just completely like fly by. They're like, okay, yeah, I have a website. Yeah, I have my Google My Business. Yeah, I have but like, you can't actually find their address on their website. So that's not helpful. You know what I mean? Like, you can't actually contact them, but they think that like they need it now. And I mean, you'd be surprised, some of those basic, like what we tell clients, SEO takes 3 to 6 months to really start showing some big results. But some of those things, I mean, they can be quick wins. You can see results a lot earlier than that. And I mean, it's worth the time that you're going to put into it. Especially because if you're looking at the difference between paid and organic, I mean, you could pay hundreds or if not thousands of dollars in a paid Facebook funnel trying to figure it out when, you know, you could have just spent the hour it takes to actually nail down your Google My Business or what have you. But I think that's really common. I mean, that's something that I see a lot with people, especially people in the trades. That everything that they've done has been referral traffic. So they've not had to worry about online. And so they've missed the evolution of digital marketing. And so now everybody's so caught up in paid funnels and making it something that seems so easy that they lack the education on everything that comes before that because they weren't worried about it. But that's what we're talking about now. So that's what they feel like they have to have now. And so how do we bridge that gap of like, okay, you've missed the last 10 years of digital marketing. Let me catch you up. And then we can talk about the strategies that work today.
Joe, I am reminded, and I can't for my life of me the exact words, but I am reminded of a quote from Jurassic Park. And it's the same kind of thing. It was Jeff Goldblum's character who he said something, I'm going to paraphrase here. He didn't like what they were doing because they, in his words, it was something along the lines of, you took the leaps that others had done before you, but you didn't have to earn it for yourself and you didn't respect it. Mm-hmm. So, and you just took that work, you patented it, you added a little bit on top, and now you're sticking on a lunchbox and off you go. And it does remind me of that sometimes. I think some people need to go through the learning curve of social as a whole, marketing as a whole, business as a whole, and reset sometimes. But that's a hard thing to do, isn't it?
And it's something too, like, I think, you know, there are some really good people out there that can really help you with a Facebook funnel, and it can work, right? But then what you're lacking is the basic marketing skills of having a relationship with your customers. Like, okay, so they've bought from you once. If you're selling a $10 widget, that sell's not going to mean much to you. You have to keep them coming back, or you have to have them tell someone to buy it, right? Like, you can only scale so far with a funnel if you don't have the fundamentals of marketing playing out in your head. Like, okay, so how are we going to move this along? How are we going to expand on this and really make it a relationship, right?
An interesting segue, depending on what country you're in. Talking a little bit about brand, where would you sit on the notion of, personal brand, business brand first, sales, tiny amount?
Mm-hmm.
Where would you sit on that kind of argument?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, if people like you, they're going to want, like, okay, so I did just go viral on TikTok. I mean, I don't know what's considered viral on TikTok. But in the last 2 days, I've gotten like 2,000 followers and over 50,000 views on one video, and tons of comments and all that stuff. And these people have no idea who I am. Yeah, go follow me on TikTok. These people have no idea who I am. I literally shared one piece of information, and it was about a meta description. And I gave step-by-step instructions on how you can change a meta description in Wix, because I found that the person was using Wix. And these people have no idea who I am. I've been building my personal brand for a long time. But they liked my personality, they liked my passion and the information that I gave out for free. And I have gotten 3 people go through my website to reach out to me. I've gotten 2 direct messages of people asking how they can work with me, and multiple other people just commenting like, how can we support you on all these things? So I don't think that there's like a hard, like, okay, have your personal brand for this long and then you can start doing sales, or have your brand set for this long and then start doing sales. I mean, I think those things, like we talked about being authentic, right? Like, if you're authentic and people like you, they're going to want to buy from you. And I don't think you should shoo them away and be like, hold on, no, we're waiting 2 more months. And then I'll start selling something. Oh, thanks, Jim. He's so sweet. I think that, be yourself and, be your brand, right? Make sure you're following your brand guidelines and what have you. And eventually those sales will trickle in. And again, it's about testing, right? So like, I thought I had a really good brand. I was really excited. People here in Wichita know who I am. And I went to hold a workshop because I thought that the audience was ready. Only 5 people signed up. Now, granted, I was still going to run the workshop with 5 people in it. But I had assumed that I had gotten that audience more ready than what I truly had. And that was just about testing. Like I had to be willing, like I said earlier, to try that, be willing to fail if it failed, and be willing to run it if only one person showed up. And I was totally willing to do that. And so now I know I need to work on that audience a little bit more. But now at the same time, I have this TikTok audience that's blowing me up that I've got to figure out how to sell to, I guess, if I want to. I don't know yet.
But to be fair as well, I mean, there's a lot of people who say, well, we're not going to try TikTok, that's for kids. Or, isn't that a place where people do like random music?
Stay away. I want all
a metadata description.
Yeah. No, seriously, Dan, it was crazy.
Exactly.
It was like, I am an actual genius. I'm a true genius because I know how to do that. But that is also, there's something to be said about like everybody has something that they can sell. I truly believe that. My wife does tax support. And there are people that she literally has to remote into their computer to show them how to copy and paste something. Like everyone has something that they can teach. I promise you. So just start sharing information and you'll, I don't know. I mean, I think I've kind of fallen into everything. I mean, don't get me wrong. I work really hard, but I think I've kind of fallen into what I'm actually good at, and what people need from me. And I think a lot of that really is just the analytics and strategy mixed with education. Like I'm really passionate about educating people about marketing and all of these things because we see a lot of people get screwed by marketers, quite frankly. And so that's kind of like the new tagline I have is like educate to empower. Like I want people to go into meetings knowing that they're going to get out of it what they need, that they're going to be able to ask the right questions and that they can trust whomever they're working with. That's kind of the goal on that front.
That's the main thing, isn't it? It's trust. I mean, you're talking about tech support for a second.
Oh, God.
I started my career as a first line support engineer at the age of 17 for a business internet provider here in the UK. So like straight out of the playground, straight into 300 calls a day call center. I was a senior engineer for an IT firm, IT manager by the age of like 20, 21, had my first mortgage at 20. But I remember the funniest, and bless him, he was an older guy. He was like nearly 70. I think he actually was over 70 years old. Mm-hmm. And this is going back a few years. I was probably 19 at the time. And he came in, he phoned up and said that his computer wasn't working. I was like, okay, well, we're your internet provider, but by all means, you're a local guy. He would always phone up like every week because he had problems with like dial up and ISDN and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. He said the floppy disk that you sent me, the floppy disk that I've got data on is stuck in the drive and I can't get it out. I was like, okay. So he couldn't load the driver of the modem that we were trying to get him to load over the phone. So I was like, tell you what, I know you're just down the road. Just bring it in. I'll fix it for you. It's fine. So he brought it in and I was like, I'm looking in this drive thinking, what the hell has he done here? And he's like looking over my shoulder. What he'd done, this is like old school, by the way. He had his what he calls data, which is basically like 3 Word documents that he just kind of typed some memoirs on. Mm-hmm. So he had this on a floppy disk, which was a 5 1/4 inch floppy disk. But the disk drive on his computer was a 3.5 inch disk drive.
Yeah, I was about to say 5.
Yeah, 5 1/4. It was like the old school floppy disks.
Yeah, that's
old, right?
Oh, no.
So bless him, what he'd done is that he couldn't figure out how to fit the 5 1/4 inch in the 3.5. So he folded it in 4 and then pushed it in and expected it to work.
No, he didn't. Dan, no, he did not.
He did, bless him. And I was like,
buddy,
I can get it out, but I'm not sure I can recover anything off of it because it literally like you bent it, snapped it, it was done. But it was folded in 4 and put in the floppy drive. And he
Everybody
asked me,
has something to learn. Everybody.
and this is the point. It's, I mean, he was over 70 years old, but he'd had an entire life of, I think he worked in structural engineering or something. You know, there's probably even now people who he knows more about that topic than even like modern structural engineers. The guy was a genius, but when it came down to floppy disks and IT and tech, clueless, utterly clueless.
But that's again too, that's the like trying to play in the world of today's tech without understanding tech. And that happens it's not just like digital marketing, our little bubble. Like that's everything. That's why the foundational skills are so important. Truly understanding the difference between a floppy disk that is flat and totally intact versus a floppy disk that has been folded into 4 that will absolutely not work. And that poor man.
Yes, bless him.
Oh man.
I'm conscious of the time, Brie, because you've got hard out, haven't you? In like 2 minutes.
Yep.
So, words of wisdom to leave everyone with today. We've jumped around a few different topics. I hope everyone's got some value out of that. If not anything else, they've got to see Brie's beautiful face, and she's telling you all about everything to do with strategy and tactics and analytics and really getting over your fear and learning and education when it comes to social and getting your business out there. If you want to work with Brie, by all means, she is right here. You can do so.
Yeah, my last day at the full-time job is Friday. So if you want to work, let's do it. Let's do it. We got to do it. Words of wisdom, run your own freaking tests. Stop trusting other people's tests because they're running tests with different data, with a different audience, with a different platform than you are. Run your own stinking tests. Read your own data. If you don't know how to read your data, find somebody that knows how to read it. Have them teach you so that you can do it. As in, call me, and I can help you out.
I'm trying to figure out how to point in mirrored.
Yeah.
There we go. That one. Speak to her. Cameras.
Oh, yeah, this is really weird. Cameras are weird.
There you go.
Anywho's, yes, run your own tests, read your own data, learn how to read your data, hire someone that can read your data. I don't care. Because every situation is different. Everyone's unique. And don't be afraid to be wrong. Don't be afraid to pull the plug on something that's just not working. And, focus on the foundational skills and you will be okay. Promise.
Done.
Mike.
Out of the mouth of the expert. So thank you very much for everyone joining. Any questions for Brie, myself, Quicc, Beast Analytics, whichever, feel free to leave them in the comments or drop any one of us a message. You're more than welcome to. I'm sure Brie would be happy to answer and help you out. Thank you very much for joining, Brie. And we will see you all again next week. A special guest to be announced soon. Exciting.
All right. Thanks for having me finally, Dan.
Pleasure. I know you're a busy girl.
Oh, yeah.
Schedule. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, and see you again.